Alrighty, what's happening, everybody? Welcome back to episode 3 of the Coach's Corner, where we put two soccer coaches in the same virtual space, and we see what happens. If you are new this week, my name is Will Selden, and I am the high school coach portion of this conversation. And joining me again today is head coach and sporting director of the Richmond Kickers, Darren Sawatzky. Darren, how are you? It's good to see your face again this week.
I'm good, man. Good to see you, Will.
Good. Well, one thing I have to say is, this whole pandemic has caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. And, we're having to be creative with different projects and stuff we keep our mind busy with. And, fortunately for us, we still have work responsibilities to handle. But this is quickly becoming one of my favorite parts of the week and something that I really look forward to. So I appreciate you taking the time and teaching me.
Well, I appreciate it. I hope you gained something from this. We're very active in our team right now on Zoom calls, so I'm getting more and more accustomed to talking on these things. But then I watch afterwards, and sometimes I sound a little more harsh than I mean to, just trying to spew out the knowledge,
Well, no, I appreciate it for sure. So one of the things that's actually kind of been on my mind since this idea came up for this whole Coach's Corner thing was this idea of building a team. And to take it back a couple months, I guess, you came in late fall, early winter. And then I guess you guys started preseason January. Is that right? Late January?
Yeah.
Okay.
February 1st, really, but yeah.
February. And so we were similar. We started preseason at Godwin when guys came back from the holiday break. And so we had a little bit of time to start building a team and training, and we had a few preseason games like you all. But I guess that's really top of mind for me, since that was the period that we've been going through up to this point. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, are there certain things that you look for? Is there like a checklist when you're building a team, like whether it's areas of the field you want to focus on or individual player qualities or anything like that?
Well, as always, Mr. Selden, you asked me questions related to variables that can go in all different directions, but I'll take the professional perspective because I'm less limited than maybe you would be as a high school coach, because we can go buy players. So from the starting point with a pro team, if you're starting from scratch, there's certainly a way that I like to play the game. It's actually pretty rare that I've been able to start from scratch due to the Richmond Kickers situation. There were 12 returning players already on options that I am working with now that I didn't choose to bring back. I like all the guys in their own way, but when you start from scratch, you're picking exact guys based on a formation. I've been a part of being a reserve team coach where I would want to pick certain players, but I wasn't able to based on the fact that the first team chose players for me. So if I could build a team the way I wanted to, you go after the physical and temporal attributes in players to play the way you want to play. I find that most of the time, similar to you, I become that ecological coach again. I take what's in the ecosystem and I have a style of play, but I have to maybe change formation and stuff based on that.
That's interesting. So for you, it's more about player qualities and temperament as opposed to areas of the field. So like, I know the reason I ask this is because there are plenty of examples of world-class coaches all over the place, and hopefully someday soon we'll talk about them. But I hear a lot of coaches talk about how like your midfield trio or however many you have in there is like the core of your team. And so that's what you build around. Or if you have a central striker, you want to build around that. But for you, is it more about going after like a type of player, whether it be pace or power or something like that?
So for me, that's the easiest part. When you talk about scouting, physical attributes are the thing I look at last, because if those aren't there, it doesn't matter. And if a player is special, you're going to notice that. If a player runs a 4.25 40, that's easy. I look at decision making first. In a 2v1 situation, do you make the right decision on whether you should dribble or pass or whatever? Then you start looking at the creation of space by an individual player. I look at those things first because that's the temporal piece. I'm looking at their ability to take in information and make a tactical decision based on the constraints that they're faced with. If they can't do that at the pro level, it doesn't matter how fast they are. There's a lot of players out there that are these great athletes. And, that's the whole argument of, if all the best athletes played soccer in America, we'd dominate. I disagree, because you take players like Iniesta and Xavi, they're not the biggest, strongest players. Lionel Messi, but they're unbelievable soccer players because, not only do they have physical attributes and are they technically good, but they're not big, powerful guys. They're just very intelligent guys. I would prefer to have intelligent players over athletes every day of the week. The trick is you want both, because you need both. You have to be able to stretch defenses and got to be able to physically handle things. So, again, I look forward to the day when I can build from scratch and have exactly what I want. And saying that, with Richmond in particular, we have an awesome group of guys. It changes my approach a little bit based on having some returning guys, but that's part of the challenge and it's fun. I mean, it's similar to what you have to deal with. You have returning guys. Maybe you have 3 seniors and 10 juniors and whatever. You have to adjust based on that.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I mean, I guess in theory, we have, similar to you all, like returning players. I mean, granted, I was new this year. The head coach was new this year. So we don't have to keep anyone. It's not like anyone's under contract. But, for anyone who's played high school sports, there's somewhat of an unwritten rule that you keep the returners depending on, a lot of different factors. But I guess, to think about the ecology that you have in front of you, again, to touch on that like last week, I think that's maybe what makes some coaches stand out in terms of their recruitment. So, like, I'm a big Liverpool fan. I know you are too, and it's taken until week 3 for us to mention that, which is a shock. But so, like, I focus a lot on the Premier League in terms of watching, and I think player identification is something that, like, I would certainly struggle with. I know, because I probably don't have the mind for the game yet. I just haven't been around it long enough. But, like, when I look at players like Adama Traore for Wolves, who's just like this absolute powerhouse and super speedy and powerful and stuff, someone's going to snap him up, I'm sure, whether it's this summer or in January or whenever it is. But it's about whether he can make the decisions at pace as well as opposed to just his power and stuff. And I think the coach that's able to see that, or if he has it, and implement that into a system, I think is going to be really successful. And so maybe player identification is a bigger piece that I'll have to learn about and become better at, because I think you're right. If someone's not able to make a decision, it doesn't matter how fast they are or powerful they are.
Well, and you're talking about the English Premier League and Wolves, and I mean, these are $1 million players that if you have the budget, you can go buy them. Like, back to building a team. If I had an unlimited budget, I could build a pretty incredible team, right? At the USL League One, we don't have an incredible budget. We have a limited budget based on looking at players and saying, okay, this player fits what I want to do. But a lot of times the player is at League One because they aren't ready for the championship or MLS or beyond. So you also accept that there's going to be a lot of teaching and growing pains. If the player's a little bit older, you're going to accept the fact that maybe they don't have some of the temporal pieces, or else they wouldn't be here. And you have to still put that all together. That's one of the most interesting challenges to coaching, is can you take a group of players and take the best and most out of what they're good at and get it out of them? Because I've found that there are a lot of players in our league in particular that when they're on and they're playing well, they can play in MLS. There's no question. But can they consistently do that? And then what environment do you create as a coach in order to try to maximize getting the most of them most of the time? It's a great challenge. It's hard, because a lot of times they wouldn't be here if they could do it all the time. So what are you going to do to try to get it out of them?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of pieces that go into that. But I think that's probably true at every level. I mean, we have players who can show moments of brilliance and stuff, and the next minute they give the ball away. And, a lot of players are like that. It's rare to find people who are brilliant all the time. But, you talk about putting them in the right position or in the right kind of environment to maximize that potential. And so I'm wondering, when you touch on identifying players based on the formation you want to play or the philosophy. I think that's an interesting relationship, those two ideas. So like philosophy versus formation or your tactical setup. Um, and when you came into the club, I was really excited because you talk about this brand of soccer that you want to play, which is aggressive and front foot. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing it. I'm sure the city of Richmond is as well. Um, so how do you see, like, as you transition from club to club or different groups of players even within the same club, how do you manage the transition of your formation while keeping your philosophy or identity?
Well, one, you asked that the supporters in the front office give you some time in order to teach and implement and create an environment that allows you to be effective at what you're trying to do. I really think that it's a 3-year plan as a pro coach. It takes you 3 years to get your locker room right, to get the system right, and to get the right players and all of that. And the reality is in our business is it's result based at all levels. If you're not successful, you lose your job. And so I always ask for patience, and I'm also humble enough to know that you have to adjust. Like if you're not getting what you want, you still have to get results. So maybe you do want to play an attacking, aggressive type of soccer, but there will be games that you can't do that based on the environment, the weather, the travel schedule, the player availability, and you have to be willing to adapt. When you talk about formations, to me, formations are semantics. It's really what areas of the field do you want to attack based on the space they give you, and what space do you want to give up to them based on how they're going to attack you. In League One, the pressing teams, North Texas and Lansing, they had more success last year in a lot of ways. And, Greenville made the final, but ultimately lost to a pressing team because of where North Texas wanted to attack teams and exploit space. They were pretty effective. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be about the formation. It's what spaces on the field are you trying to get into, and how are you doing that based on their defensive setup? It's, systems can change, but where you attack and why you attack or how you want to allow them to attack you, that's where the real trick in coaching comes. And that trying to get guys all on the same page in order to do that, that's high level stuff. And a player might be fast and strong and have the ability, but if they don't understand that we're pushing towards the left center back for them or to the left side of the field or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You can be as good as you want, but the team has to utilize space as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool to hear you talk about it. And I guess I wonder, based off that, how flexible do you feel like you have to be in terms of your tactical setup in League One, for example, based on what other teams are going to do or what you think other teams are going to do? Or is it more, this is how we play? Like we understand the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities that the other team's going to provide us, but we're going to stick to our tactical system. Or is it a combination of the two?
Well, I want both. I want to play our style, and I want to be effective and win games. As a pro coach, you have to win or you don't keep your job. So that's number one. You got to win games. But I don't want to do it and be boring. I want to do it so that it's entertaining, and I want to help our guys do it because it's exciting and fun, and it engages a community. We're an asset to our community, and we want to represent it well. We want it to be exciting and fun and eventful. It's interesting because I'll use like Orlando City B last year. They played some of the funnest soccer on the planet. I mean, they barely took corner kicks. They played short and went, and I think it cost them in a way. And at the end of the day, their coach got moved on, and 95% of their team got moved on. So you had this whole group of players playing great soccer, but they weren't effective because they weren't able to do it all the time, and teams exploited them and won, sometimes ugly. And there has to be a balance. You have to win enough and develop your brand, and that's why I say it takes time, because you're going to take some lumps in order to get to where you want to get. The trick is to have enough balance to not do that. The Seattle Sounders won their first MLS Cup in a game in Toronto and did not take one shot on goal in the game. So here's my point. Would you rather win and be MLS Cup champions and take it to penalties and win, or would you rather stretch the game out and get exploited by a team that might be better than you on the day? I don't. People argue with me about that all the time, and I think Smets was a tactical genius in the game. Everybody's like, "Oh man, it was ugly. It was ugly." It was like, yeah, but he's the one holding the trophy. He knew what he needed to do to win the game. That takes and he got his team to believe that. That takes way more brain power than, oh man, we played incredible, but we lost 3-0. It's at the pro level, it doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah. I would not argue with you. I'm certainly pragmatic in that way. I mean, I think you do what you have to do to get the job done, and at the end of the day, if you're holding the trophy, that's what matters. So from a training perspective, well, actually, let me back up. I probably have not been in my coaching career long enough to have developed a brand that I like to play. I mean, I'm 23. I have ideas about the game, of course, and I've been playing since I was 4 years old, and I think that where I am currently with my thoughts on coaching and how I would like a team to play in an ideal situation has been dictated a lot by how I was as a player, which is maybe selfish. I don't know. But I don't have a ton of coaching experience to draw on. And so as a player, I was, you can probably tell I'm not the most athletic guy. So I was much more of a technical player and like to be on the ball and be creative in that way. And so I look for players of that, kind of profile and try to piece them together to play in that sort of way. And you mentioned last week, I think it was, that you're a worker bee were the words you used as a player. So do you think that has kind of influenced your identity that you try to bring to a team, or is it something else?
I think the word that I would use for that is evolve. It's always evolving. You have coaches in our league like John Harkes who played in World Cups, and you have up and coming coaches. It's their first pro level. There's something to learn from all of them. Last year I coached in Tucson, and it was really interesting being a reserve team and kind of being told who was going to play and how to play. And it was hard for me. It was really difficult, but I learned a ton. And there are pieces that I took from Rick Shantz's style, the guy at Phoenix, that have evolved in my coaching, and what I saw from some of the great stuff Orlando did last year. I take ideas, and Greenville and a lot of different coaches, the Madison coach, like looking at these guys with different backgrounds and taking from them. But ultimately you add and all of that. But at the end of the day, I was a worker bee. I demand that. It's easy. It's controllable. Everybody can work hard. Everybody can defend. And if you're not willing to do that, you have to be good enough for your teammates to then do the work for you. And at the League One level, I haven't seen a player yet who everybody on your team should be working for you because you're that good. Because if that's the truth, you should move on. And I really believe that on any team. Everybody's got to put the work in. Show up, humble yourself. Roll your sleeves up and work for everybody. And that's certainly a piece of me that I bring into my coaching. But the flip side is there are people with special ability that maybe I didn't have. You have to kind of back up and get out of the way sometimes and allow them to express their art.
Yeah, one of my favorite phrases, and I don't know who came up with this, and I don't even know if I agree with it, but I think it's funny and cool, is that you need 8 guys to carry the piano and 3 to play it. And I certainly haven't come across a situation like that in my own playing experience. I mean, I was lucky to play with some great players, and I'm lucky now to coach some great players, but I haven't been with a team where it's like, okay, well, the 8 of us will do your work and you guys just go shine. I mean, you think about the teams all over the world that can do that, like teams that have Messi and Ronaldo and Mbappe and all these crazy, generational players. But, I think at this point in my career that is yet to come true, although I hope it does someday.
I think it's hard for players, me included. When you're playing, you want to have an impact on the game. You want your personality out there. Finding a way to create environments and help players understand that the better the team does, the better it is for you. And in fact, the better the team is doing, it actually opens up more time for you to be able to do that individual thing that you really want to do. It's a hard thing, man. And at this level, we struggle is not the right word, but we work through the challenges of 9 guys aren't going to be Lionel Messi on your team in League One. And my attitude is I'm happy to let you bring your personality into the game at the right time. I just ask that you're part of the work to make sure we get the ball back. And if everybody's bought in that, then everybody has an opportunity to express themselves. I think one of the most unique things at the pro level is when smart players recognize that some other players are either in form that week, that month, that year, or just the special player on the team, and really work to help the guys around them understand that in the way that they play. Because at the end of the day, if the team wins, everybody's going to get paid. Everybody's going to have a job the next year and all of that. If you play incredibly well and you're unbelievable, but your team is in the cellar, you're going to be lucky to have a job. So it's a challenge for sure, man. And it's I'm learning. I'm every day I try to learn and grow from that, and it's always challenging for sure.
Yeah, that's cool perspective. So moving on, I guess from a training perspective, which was the phase that we were both in when this pandemic started, how do you implement your identity on a team? Whether that's aggression, and obviously you have the luxury of bringing in players with that mentality. And I don't know if this is the situation for you or not, but if you do have players who maybe that doesn't come as naturally to them, how do you train something like that, or can you?
Well, first, I was watching this positivity thing with John Gordon, and Dan Cortez was on there, and he articulated it in a way that I hadn't kind of thought about it. There's the how-to, and when you and I were talking about academy soccer, because I've been involved in it so much, I was giving the how-to last week, and what I really should have said was how I do, not how to. And I say that as it relates to training. This is how I do it, and I learned from Clyde Charles a long time ago. He was a great coach I had in college. And he always talked about environments, creating environments that bring out pieces of the game. And so I always think about, when I'm designing things, what are the obstacles? What are the things that you're going to face on game day at that intensity level? And how do you replicate that in training? Our training with Richmond is always very competitive. There's always a winner and a non-winner, because that's reality. Everybody doesn't get a ribbon in life. If you lose your job. If you lose, you don't have one. And if you win, you get accolades. But the next day, you got to do it again. And so creating an environment where it is competitive from the locker room all the way out to the field, and having them think about it all the time is so important. That helps develop grit in players, and fight and battle. And I always ask the guys, do you hate losing more than you like winning? Because if it's the opposite, you're not going to make it very far. You have to just hate losing so badly that if it's me and you beat me at chess or checkers or anything, we're probably going to be playing till 3 or 4 in the morning till I have a chance to win, and then I'll go. And because I can't, as a competitor, I just can't accept losing. And I think that most people that are successful in sport have that mentality.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty consistent trait among people who are successful in all walks of life, really. I mean, you can be competitive in any number of different areas in life. So one thing that struck me yesterday, we had our giant staff call on Google Hangouts yesterday, and Ray, the first team operations guy, was talking about different things that he's also pulled from you in his time working with you. And one of the things that he mentioned was your pre-training speeches, if you will. So I think, the most successful coaches and the ones that get the most, press or whatever, are sometimes the ones that are able to communicate the best, whether that's with the press or with their team or, with their management or whoever it is. So first of all, how important is that in your opinion? And second of all, what do you think you do, or what do you think I should do, I guess, from a selfish perspective, to get better at that?
Well, again, this is how I do. Everybody has their way. Having personal relationships and caring about people, and not just looking as pro players as commodities, is just something that I do. I care about people. I was talking to Emiliano this morning about his daughter and everything we're going through, because I actually care. I really do care about that. And that's where I start. That's the first piece. how much you communicate, how hard your communication is, how much you demand is related to a lot of variables. As we talk about like a training microcycle, a Monday when you're coming back to restart the week on a reentry day is not going to be the same as the loading that you put on them temporally on a Friday, the day before a game or the morning of a game. There are times during the stretch of the season when you need to get something out of them, or you need them to stay within the groove that you're in. How you communicate and how much you communicate is really key. Sometimes it's a very short, sharp discussion for me, and then I have individual side talks to players that I know need a little extra. Sometimes guys need a lot of information, and sometimes they need a little. But they can also tell by tone of voice and stuff what the session's going to be like. Like, okay, it's going to be demanding today. And for the most part, I'm pretty open and transparent with what we're doing. But sometimes you got to push them temporarily a little bit to help them grow and to get ready for a bigger opponent or whatever it might be.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. It's about treating individuals as individuals, and like you said, not as commodities. And that's obviously something, like everything, that you can get better and better at. And yeah, I'd agree. In my limited experience, that is really important. And I've had a lot of people tell me that. So I'll add you to the list. But again, I mean, I could go on all day trying to take in information from you about training and philosophy and all those different buzzwords. But I think we'll cut it here for today. And again, I'm just so appreciative of you taking the time to teach me and have this conversation. And I'm really looking forward to next week.
I appreciate that you look to me for that stuff. I'm humbled by that. The most important thing that I would say, and I think I've said it before, is be you. Mourinho and Pep Guardiola and Klopp and all of these coaches might do it a certain way, but Will Selden's Will Selden. So be Will Selden.
Well, thank you. I'll do my best. Alrighty. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, Will.
See ya. Out.